Right, next item. We have Secretary with us. Please walk us through the paper. Chairman, the port and maritime industry in Hong Kong has been established for over 150 years, and we have built ourselves as the maritime hub, and it is also an important transporter. Hong Kong Port is the 5th busiest container port in the world, with a throughput of around 20 million 20-foot equivalent units, of which 60% are transshipment cargo. Hong Kong is also ranking the 4th in terms of transshipment of cargo. It is the government's long-term objective to develop the port and maritime industry in Hong Kong. To maintain Hong Kong's competitiveness, the government has implemented a number of improvement measures, deepening the Kuai container basin and its approaching channel from 15 to 17 meters to enable ultra-large container terminals to access the container terminals at all tides. Also, we are providing additional 6 port backup sites of about 18 hectares so as to expand the terminal yard space. And we are also providing additional barge berths for enhancing container handling efficiency. We are also going to release a sea frontage of 120 meters at Stonecutters Island public cargo working areas for port backup use. On the other hand, we have highly developed high value-added maritime services. We have over 800 shipping-related companies providing a wide range of high value-added maritime services, including ship agency and management, ship broking, maritime insurance, ship finance, and maritime legal and arbitration services, as well as other supporting services. With rich experience in trade and maritime business, and we also have professionals. Hong Kong government continues to promote the industry as a high value-added industry, and we also have quite a number of large corporations using Hong Kong as their base, and we have also set up the Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board that provides a high-level platform for collaboration between the government, the business, and the academia. And we also seek to promote Hong Kong's status as the maritime hub. In the past year, the Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board has made recommendations to the government on 3 fronts, that is building manpower, enhancing the industry's capacity, etc. And to further enhance our competitive edge, we'll continue to implement trade facilitation measures. For example, we're going to relax the maximum hours of stay for multiple entry permits of vessels, and we'll also consider the immigration arrangement for non-local contract seamen for vessels in distress so that they can work in Hong Kong. And the government has also taken the board's in recommendation and the industry's recommendation. For example, we're going to make use of the ETOs overseas to expedite the ship registration, the certificate of registry for newly built Hong Kong registered vessels overseas, so that they can be commissioned as soon as possible. Manpower development is also crucial to the industry development. The government made a commitment of $100 million in 2014 to set up a maritime and aviation trading fund. At present, its operation is overseen by the Manpower Development Committee of the Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board. We also collaborate with local universities. We have introduced 3 new scholarship schemes to encourage young people to undertake maritime studies and on their graduation to join the maritime industry. We also have a series of training courses to increase the manpower supply and to alleviate shortage in the industry. In terms of promotion, and publicity, we have actively participated in large-scale international maritime companies to operate their business in Hong Kong and to further enhance our status as an international maritime center. We have been participating in large-scale international maritime exhibitions. Apart from the biennial International Maritime Exhibition, we also held the first Maritime Week in Hong Kong in 2016 to attract overseas participants. Our publicity effort has seen some results. For example, the International Alliance of Maritime Industry has set up the first branch in Asia to nurture talents in Asia. And after visiting UK, we are actively discussing with the UK Department to foster collaboration on manpower development and promotion. Chairman, the government will continue to enhance Hong Kong's role as a transshipment port, and we're also going to enhance our port capacity so that port and maritime services in the shipping industry can have synergy, and also to capitalize on the opportunities brought about by the Belt and Road Initiative and also the Big Bay Area Plan. We have 4 members waiting to speak. Mr. Holden Chow, 4 minutes. First, Chairman, I thank you and the Secretariat for arranging for this meeting today, because earlier I suggested that the panel discuss the issue of port and maritime services in Hong Kong. We understand at the moment for vessels with the Hong Kong SAR flag, meaning that they're registered in Hong Kong, they can now travel around the world, which is good, and we now rank the 4th in this regard. And I think the Marine Department has done quite a good job for attracting ships to be registered in Hong Kong. My question is this. In the paper, paragraph 14 suggests that in order to improve the round-the-clock services, there are some countries such as the Marshall Islands, they are also providing round-the-clock services around the world. And on this front, when the Director of Marine issues an exemption, I want to know whether I'd like to know your progress in issuing exemption for shipping surveyor. And I'd like to know whether the ETOs can give some support, because for the Marshall Islands practice, they also have offices around the world so that they can provide round-the-clock services. And if we can further rely on the assistance of ETOs, I want to know whether we can provide similar support as well. I'd like to know the government's work in this regard. The second point, according to the paper, it is said that in the future there will be resources invested in grooming manpower for the maritime insurance industry. So my question is whether you have kept any statistics on the manpower or organizations in the field of maritime insurance, and do you have any target on how many practitioners should be trained? Let me take your second question on maritime insurance. We have close to 90 such companies in Hong Kong, with about 400 practitioners providing the service of maritime insurance. For international or the PMI clubs, there are 13 members, 12 of which are providing service in Hong Kong. This is the largest service provider group. And according to what we mentioned in the paper, we hope to provide round-the-clock services as much as possible. And at the moment, we do not have ETOs in every city, but we hope to rely on the assistance on the government's ETOs overseas and in the mainland, and under the current legislation, only the Director of Marine can issue exemptions to the vessels registered in Hong Kong. We understand the concern. We hope that we can put in place a delegation arrangement for professional surveyors to sign off exemptions. But at the same time, we understand that this may involve other maritime laws, and we are still looking into the matter, and we hope to streamline the process. Mr. Chow, just to supplement about this delegation of power, I want to see that your progress can be expedited, because if this can be done, we can then provide round-the-clock services, and we can substantially enhance our competitive edge.
That's exactly our objective. Mr. Luk Chung-hong, the shipping and port industry is an important pillar for Hong Kong economy, and it's an important employment market. And the FTU has been in cooperation with the government in the training of manpower. But the manpower situation is getting worse. The measures adopted by the government to train manpower, well, according to past data, are not really working. Even Star Ferry cannot hire sufficient hands. Earlier, we asked about the number of people employed by the maritime industry after they receive training under the program sponsored by Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, but we haven't been given any figure to show that the training has been effective. So would the government adopt new measures such as vocational partnership training program, so that the trainee can get an allowance while they receive training and also the practical training? There are fewer and fewer seamen on local ships, and there is an incentive for local shipping companies to hire new seamen. Can the same be provided to overseas shipping companies to attract the employment, to employ more local seamen? And also for people holding the marine department on skipper class 2s, would they be allowed to operate ships at 120 tons as well? I'll say a few words and I'll defer to the director. I understand in this maritime industry, manpower is an important issue. Whether we're talking about local vessels or ocean-going ships, we need to train more people. Therefore, we set up the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, and we have collaborations with local universities, and we also have summer practicum training for the trainees to train up more people. And I would like to refer to Ms. Zhang, Acting Deputy Secretary. On the question of the training provider under the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, some 3,000 people have benefited from the training program offered by the fund. In the maritime industry, some 70 or 80% of them are for the maritime industry. As for local vessels and the holders of certain qualifications, and the member asked about the relevant data. There are 9 measures on maritime and aviation training. some are for local shipping operators to apply. I can provide the figures in due course. Can I get a specific answer on the question of holders of a Coxswain Grade 2 certificate? We have sufficient time today, so Mr. Wong may want to respond to that. Thank you for your question, Mr. Look. I would like to respond to the third question raised by Mr. Look, and also Mr. Look's question about holders of a Coxswain Grade 2 certificate and also the passing rate of the examination. Say a student has been trained by maritime training institutions, and they can take up a job in the shipping industry. The Marine Department would help these people to liaise with the shipping companies to facilitate their placement. And there's no question of trainees who are denied of further training or apprenticeship opportunities upon graduation. Apart from major local shipping companies, there are other ships registered elsewhere being operating in Hong Kong. They also recruit Hong Kong trainees as apprentices. So there are overseas shipping companies doing this, and they recruit local trainees as well. As for whether those holding a certificate to operate 60-ton vessels, can they be allowed to offer to operate bigger vessels at designated routes? Yes, this is covered. We're talking about a Coxswain Grade 2 certificate. In the past, it's based on the 60-ton vessel basis, but they can receive further training by the employer, by the company, and if they receive specific training for the vessel concerned, they will be allowed to operate bigger vessels at designated vessels and for designated routes. So this is allowed. Mr. Luke mentioned about Coxswain Grade 2 certificate examination and the passing rate. If we look at last year, Grade 2 certificate of Coxswain, we have examination on sea maps and oral exam and a written test. Written test has a passing rate of 40%, and oral test 20%. So that's for the information of Mr. Luke. So that's very detailed. Mr. Yik Chi Ming. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Luke for showing concern about the inability to hire seamen and sailors by Star Ferry. Actually, this is a problem faced by all the ferry operators. The Marine Department knows this well. If you look at the certificates or the masters and engine operators licenses issued in the past 5 or 10 years, so many local ferry routes may have to close down in 5 or 10 years because of lack of manpower. The training has been provided for more qualified positions for ocean-going ships. But of course, the training fund is not for the purpose of recruitment, and local ferry operators are facing a very difficult situation. I hope the Secretary would pass this on to the next Secretary for proper for a proper solution to be sought. I thank the assistance offered so far, but there are 4 pressing issues which will affect our ports and related trades. First, we are very concerned the mainland would continue to open up the navigation rights of coastal areas. We haven't received no information about whether the Chinese government would issue official documents to that effect. And also, we are concerned about the height restriction of Chiang Mai Bridge. It's just 53 meters. That may be difficult for new ships. The industry has looked into this through a consultancy study, and the height restriction can be relaxed according to the study. If this is not relaxed, then ocean-going ships would not come to Hong Kong. They will go to Nam Sha and Circle, and they will skip Hong Kong. And to the east, for Myers Bay, they don't need to have a guide. Now it's a requirement, and they will have to spend $400 million a year, and that means that they will not go to Yantian because they have to pass our waters or en route to Yantian. And also the Competition Commission is looking into the issue of collective exemption or block exemption. We're concerned that the Competition Commission will not approve VDA, and the Association of Shipping Operators will be affected. If one of the issues is resolved, if they remain problems, then your shipping operators would skip Hong Kong. We're talking about a lot of jobs, especially for those with lower education qualification. I hope the Secretary can address these issues. I have one further question for the next round. For the 4 questions raised by the government, they are equally matters of concern to the government, especially about the navigation rights and the scheduled shipping services, and also the Competition Commission's concerns, and the industry's is concerned that their business will be affected. For overseas shipping companies, they are not allowed to ply among ports of China. So we enjoy an advantage. That's why we are a transshipment center. Some 60% of our cargo throughput is actually transshipment cargo. So if the mainland relaxes the restriction on foreign ships, therefore our transshipment hub business will be affected. We are concerned. We understand the concern of the industry, and we are also concerned about what this would do to our port functions. In the past year or so, I personally wrote to the Ministry of Transport and the Hong Kong Macau office of the State Council, and we have reflected views to the Guangdong authorities, and both in writing and also when we met them. We told them the concerns that we have in Hong Kong. There's no news that there will be gradual relaxation of such navigation rights to mainland ports. We are concerned about whether there will be holes in the regulation system. For the height restriction or for Chiang Mai Bridge, the industry, the operators have been talking to the Marine Department for this. We need to strike a balance. We know that for ultra large ships, if Qingma Bridge height restriction can be relaxed, of course they will find it convenient. But we have to understand that Qingma Bridge is the only access to the land access to the airport. And there was an accident at the Cap Sui Moon Bridge, so we have concern about the safety of this bridge.
So the departments concerned are tackling this issue. For example, the technical specification, the building, the clearance, risk assessment, and after the limit is relaxed, whether there will be any impact on the maritime traffic. We hope that in terms of relaxation of the clearance, we can look into the feasibility on the pilotage in Myers Bay. The Pilotage Association has some views on the matter, and secondly, what exemption can be granted under our laws. And there are also legal requirements, and the Pilotage Association believes that there should be additional effort in the area, and as a result, the pilotage fees would be higher, and the Marine Department is trying to liaise with the parties. As for the Hong Kong Liner Shipping Association, they have raised this issue. There is a voluntary discussion agreement as a form of mediation in other jurisdictions, and the Competition Commission has formed the preliminary views that it may be contravening the competition ordinance. The Transport and Housing Bureau, on more than one occasion, has tried to put forward our Bureau's views. We understand that the Competition Commission's views is important, but at the same time, we have put forward the practices adopted by other jurisdictions for the Commission's reference. We are waiting their ruling. That's a very detailed answer. If necessary, please wait for the next round. Dr. Edward Yu, I'd like to ask about the development of container terminals, because I attended the WO meeting in Singapore on behalf of LegCo, and we were arranged to visit the container terminal in Singapore. We understand that the efficiency of the Singaporean container terminal is higher than in Hong Kong. So I want to know whether you have the statistics, but my observation is that in terms of utilizing the container terminal, they have much higher efficiency. But they also plan to reprovision the container terminal so as to expand it in scale, and also to enhance the utilization of land and the efficiency of the terminal. According to the background brief provided by the Electrical Secretariat, we are already doing a lot to increase land supply. We have 15 hectares of land which will be available in phases. There will also be 4 hectares of land which in due course will be provided for additional barge berths. But according to the paper, it is said that in the third quarter of 2015, multi-story car parks will be provided for container trucks and heavy goods vehicles, and there will also be a site in Qingyi, and a study will be conducted in this regard. Now, that was in the third quarter of 2015. I'd like to have an update. Is it that a multi-story car park will be built? About the third question, I'll defer Ms. Cheung, Acting Deputy Secretary, to respond to that. As for the future of the container terminal, especially on the point of the container terminal in Singapore, I'd like to stress that this is not something new. In 2013, or rather in the end of 2012, when I went on a duty visit in Singapore, I also visited their container terminal. And back then, they already had this proposal to reprovision the container terminal towards the west, because at present the container terminal is quite close to the urban district. A similar suggestion was raised in Hong Kong because the container terminal was first set up in Kwai Ching. It was considered a remote area, but now things are very different. So there is a suggestion to reprovision our container terminal as well. But our consideration is of course different than the consideration of the Singaporean government, because the container terminal is owned by the government in Singapore, whereas in Hong Kong it is privately run. Now, is this a feasible suggestion? You may note that in 2014, when we published the long-term housing strategy, we talked about our vision on housing and land supply. We did not talk about the container terminal, but we mentioned that if we could release land by reprovisioning some facilities, we may release more land in the urban districts. And that's of course related to the container terminal. Well, the problems facing Hong Kong and Singapore may be different in terms of reprovisioning the container terminal. And apart from the reprovisioning, we also need to consider road infrastructure and other supporting facilities. Now, we have not got the information of all jurisdictions, but in terms of efficiency, our container terminal's efficiency is not bad at all, because we have a very huge cargo throughput despite the small size. Over the past decade, we have dealt with 20 million TEUs, or slightly over the 20-foot requirement, and every hour our lifting machine can handle 30 to 40 cargoes, 36 to 40 containers, which is quite a high rate. And for ocean lining vessels visiting Hong Kong last year, on average, they stayed 11 hours in the ports of Hong Kong. According to other sectors' information, the time for processing the containers is much shorter than in other jurisdictions. And we're regarded as a catch-up port. That is to say, if there is a delay in other ports for various reasons, in Hong Kong they can always catch up with it and make up for the loss of time. And of course, we face constraints in terms of land supply and how we can optimize the use of land for port and backup uses, and that is why we have also proposed different measures, such as the one mentioned by the member, multi-story car parks. I'll defer to Ms. Cheung to take your question on that. About the last question on the provision of a multi-story car park, I think I can give you a two-part answer. About allocating a piece of land in Kwai Ching for a multi-story car park, the study has been by and large completed, but then we have follow-up work including the feasibility study and traffic flow. We need to conduct these studies first, and the Transport and Housing Bureau is actively following up on these matters with other departments such as the Transport Department, or we're also working with the Development Bureau at the moment. In terms of the site in Kwai Chung, for Tsing Yi, we're considering whether to conduct another study on multi-story car park there in due course. We're going to engage a consultant for the study, which, well, we do not have a timetable at the moment, but we're following up on this issue. So when should I next ask you for an update? Once we have a timetable, we will report to members as soon as possible. Well, she she refuses to answer. I've asked twice. Mr. Leung Kok-hong, please speak into the microphone. Since 2014 April to March 2017, you have provided subsidy to 3,000 students in the aviation and the maritime fields. Do you have the breakdown of figures? How many students from the respective fields? ADS, we do have a breakdown. For the 3,000 students, about 80% are from the maritime industry. They are the practitioners or students who have benefited from the fund. So 2,400. What about the employment situation now? Are they working? For those at work, did they get a promotion? Because we have incentive scheme that is some sort of training award. Then about the 3,000 students, 2,400 of them, did they get any incentive? Let me refer to the schemes under the training fund. Some students or beneficiaries of the scholarship schemes are required to be employed by maritime companies for some period of time, say 1 year or 18 months. And there is also another category, the in-service practitioners in the, say, maritime industry. I have read through the items 1 to 7 in the annex. But what about their career path? Or can you tell me the turnover rate? Have they left the industry after completing training and working for some time? For practitioners, we followed up the matter with some companies, but as far as the MATF is concerned, they have not asked the students about that. But I can supplement another figure, because for the students, we provide subsidies to tertiary institutions for students undertaking maritime studies, and according to the universities, 55% of students join the maritime related industries after graduation. Second point about the seamen. We do not have sufficient local seamen. Is it because the pay is too low? We do have manpower, but the pay is too low, just like Star Ferry. We know that the weather is, the compartment is so hot during summer. So it's not a question of whether we have manpower or not, and whether they're competent, but then their pay is too low. Have you thought about it? In general, of course, wages must be a factor for attracting new blood to the industry. Mr. Wong, the Deputy Director, can also supplement your answer in this regard, as they have been talking to the industry. But our understanding is that wage is not the only factor, because in other ports, in Singapore, Shanghai, Taipei, when we exchange with them, they also express difficulty in recruiting seafarers. And Deputy Director, Mr. Wong Sai-Fat, can supplement. Thank you, Chairman. On recruiting seamen, I think Sir Leung's point is correct. Now, it depends on the company's allocation of resources, and to put it more directly, how much pay they're offering. Well, let's say for the third runway project, we have a lot of practitioners working there, and the pay on average is higher than other crews on vessels operating on a similar model. For young people, and even for those already in employment, they would be willing to take up these jobs. So it's not a question of whether the work condition is too bad that would deter young people from joining the industry. Under the MATF, there is a scheme that attracts new blood to the industry, and even for in-service seamen, they will be encouraged to obtain professional qualification. Yes, I see that's for grade or points 3, 4, and 5 in the annex. That is local vessel training incentive scheme, seagoing training incentive scheme, and ship repair training incentive scheme. For item number 2, that is for apprentices or cadets on ocean-going vessels, and they'd be given a monthly subsidy of $6,000. Well, let me be frank with you. We have so much money. You should dish out sweeteners to them first. Well, I know a very famous journalist. He used to be a seaman, but now he has become a journalist. And we have lost a lot of manpower. And we also have students graduating from the polytechnics, Law Shuke, the journalist, and some others. We had this experience once, and frankly, if you want to retain manpower in the field, you need to pay.
I'm not talking about tax rebate. We're talking about trained people who once they go away, they won't return. So you should try to keep them in the initial 3 years. Unless they go back in the service sector, they won't return to the industry. We have so much money. All right, there's a comment. Any response or follow-up action? We understand the thinking behind Mr. Leung's comments. Mr. Jeremy Tam. I'm sorry. I had to attend the meeting next door. I wonder if the question have been asked and answered. On the question of training of seamen. Have you ascertained how many seamen have been joined the relevant industry through the training program? I would defer to Mr. Wong's for further response, but I would like to say that we do not just rely on this training fund for manpower promotion. We have been doing more. Mr. Wong, perhaps if we talk about seaman training, we talk about seagoing vessels vis-a-vis local vessels. When we talk to Mr. Leung, we say that starting from 2004, we started the incentive scheme. And in 2014, the honorarium was $6,000 for seagoing seamen. Most were trained by the Maritime Training Institute, and there are a small number by the COHK. In 2004. At one point, there were not sufficient numbers of intake students, and we have been tracking the situation of the intake students and what happened to them after graduation. We know that there are more people getting further training and qualified. As the paper sets out in the annex, for local vessel seamen, we are attracting not just young men, but but also the young people. We provide an additional $2,500, and the total is $20,000, but we take away $12,000 first. That's not a deduction, but we encourage them to get a qualification for either as a engineer or a coxswain. From 2014 up to now, we've seen 71 new entrants applying for the incentive scheme. 69 of them have been attained local qualifications. That is to say, they can serve as an engineer or as engineers or coxswains. On various occasions, the industry, especially the local operators, have talked about the inability to recruit seamen, especially when you see that the seamen serving on Star Ferry routes are rather senior in age. I think this board, Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board, is more concerned about the maritime industry, but the training fund is both for the maritime and aviation industries. Especially if you look at the list, number 1 and number 2 are both industries, maritime and aviation industries. Of course, it's good to cover 2 industries, but would the training fund be diluted for as far as the maritime industry is concerned? Should there be another fund for aviation industry? And I was under the impression that the Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board was established to handle maritime issues. What about aviation? In 2014, the government deployed $100 million in setting up the training fund. It covers both the maritime and aviation, and is under the THB. But of course, we need to train manpower for both industries. We dedicated different amounts of funds for different training. But for the newly established Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board, it's just for the maritime and port sector. And the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund would look into the utilization of the amounts dedicated to maritime training. Who would be looking after aviation? My bureau. And in that, we would look at training programs, incentive schemes, training schemes, and internship schemes. Second round. I have received a motion without notice, but we have to maintain a quorum to deal with that. After Mr. Yik has asked his questions in the second round, we have to deal with the motion. Please ask your colleagues to come back. Otherwise, we have to sound the bell. I'm a director of MTL. And Mr. Tam said that, or Mr. Yu said after visiting Singapore, he has found Singapore to be much more efficient. I thank the Secretary for clarifying things. And we want to promote the logistics and infrastructure collaboration of the 9 cities in the Bay Area. And he said that we can both benefits under the new development scheme in terms of maritime and port services. Does the government have any plan to tie in with the development of these 9 cities in the Pearl River Delta so that our maritime and port industry can be promoted? for the Bay Area covering Hong Kong, Macau, and Guangdong Province. The NDRC is taking the lead, and in the past months we have been in communication with them in how to plan for the future developments of the Bay Area. But we have exchanged views, but for details we have to wait until the views have been collated and assessed. In the Bay Area, we have Guangzhou, Shenzhen, which are keen to develop their ports, and so is Hong Kong. The current assessment is that there is still room for development for the ports in the three places, although we are all handling cargo from the mainland, but we have different comparative advantages. Mainland ports are closer to the sources of cargo on the mainland, and for our port, even in the face of very intense competition by mainland ports, we still maintain a throughput of 20 million TEUs. And I've already pointed out the efficiency of our port. And it's hoped that through the Bay Initiative, we can be mutually beneficial arrangements, although there will be competition. May I use a minute to talk about the training of manpower, which is a matter of concern. The training fund allow the seamen to get the incentive upon change of jobs. I hope you would seek the FC's approval to make changes. Say, when I joined as a seaman, I didn't have any idea to get further training to become a coxswain, but now that they want to work hard and move up the qualification ladders, we should allow them to do so. We will follow up the matter. Mr. Hon Chow, equally, is the second round. Two matters that I would like to follow up. The Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, with an injection of $100 million, some 3,000 students and in-service practitioners have been benefited. How much of the $100 million has been spent? How much is left? That's the first issue I want to follow up. And earlier I submitted a question about the Marine Department's e-certification service. May I be updated on the progress of this e-certification service? When will it be launched? On the question of the outstanding amount of the training fund, I'll ask the Ms. Jiang to respond, and then the other question will be addressed by Mr. Wong. As at March of 2017, that is the close of the 2016-17 financial year, we've spent 26 million out of the 100 million. But in 2017-18 financial year, some schemes have already been implemented. We are already accepting the applicants. We believe we will be able to spend half of the training fund by the end of the current financial year. Deputy Director, I would like to respond to the question raised by Mr. Chow concerning the e-certification of ships. We have been making good progress. We believe in the first quarter of 2018 we can implement the new service. Mr. Leung Hong, second round, 2 minutes. The last paragraph is about the last paragraph.
你講大灣區嗰度咧，其實即係我覺得啊。
I think Mr. Yik Ji-ming has made a valid point. It's about the mainland policy and how it would impact on our transshipment center status. If we join the Big Bay, the Bay Initiative, it would harm us. It's a major policy issue because of the principle one country, two systems, and there are certain restrictions on the mainland. And if the mainland then changes the policy, then there's no point be part of the Bay Initiative. Well, we are alarmed by such a suggestion. It's just not just an investment on our part, but we don't know what the policy will be after the investment is made.
So we'll only be able to earn from the intermediary service as a transshipment port, the technician, etc. We do not expand in volume, and we may be able to help with creating jobs. Have you thought about it, Secretary? The ports around the world face competition. We have ports developing and catching up fast. Hong Kong used to be the busiest port around the world a decade ago, and then we were overtaken by Singapore, and then Singapore has been overtaken by Shanghai. So it is a fact that ports around the world face competition. But on the whole, in the past decade, we have achieved a throughput of 20 million TEUs. And comparing to other container terminals, which used to be having a higher throughput, we seem to have overtaken others. In Europe, the largest container port is in Hamburg. They have just 50% of Hong Kong's throughput. So we should not be belittling ourselves. But just now when I answered Mr. Frankie Yick's question, we also discussed the discussion of opening up of navigation rights. We have expressed our concerns to the central authorities, and they understand our concern. At present, we do not have any information about opening up the navigation rights. Well, Secretary, either it's the policy or it is a commercial operation. We may not need government policy to develop the industry. We can rely on business and commerce so that we get reassurance. Of course, if you want them to alter the central policy, it will be impossible. But we do have port companies as counterparts. We have invested so much, and if there is a policy change, then we stand to lose everything. You should have the details. For example, there may be companies not allowed to do business in our port. Well, it hasn't to do with the port agreement signed, because ultimately it's the ship owners that decide which port to use. We can form an alliance, but we are not sure what the direction of the Bay Area will be. This is still very preliminary. We want to set down the cooperation framework, but we can explore, and we cannot exclude the possibility of collaborating with other ports outside Guangdong. Well, that concludes the item. Members have finished asking questions. I'll go on to deal with the motion. We do not have quorum in this room. We need 11 members, including chairman. So we need to ring the bell, please.
唔好行住啊，爭一個啫喎。
Just one member short. Don't go away.
爭一個，爭一個，
Just one short.
拉多位同事。
Can we ask another member from another room to come? Just get one member. That would do. Mr. Jeremy Tam, alright? Alright. Mr. Hon Chow, please read out your motion and then we'll proceed to vote. No need to read? Okay, we can all read. No need to read it out. Do you want to claim a division? No? Well, for those in favor of Mr. Hon Chow's motion, please raise your hands. Anyone against? No? Any abstention? No? So, motion is passed. AOB, nothing under AOB. So, meeting's adjourned. The next meeting will be held on 24th of July. This is the last meeting for Secretary Mr. Anthony Zhang to come to our meeting. And thank you for your service. Thank you.